Whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you.
Let me know if anything just...
Okay, everybody, thank you for coming to, oh, I'm sorry. So, thank everybody for coming. Sorry we ran out of snacks, but such is the nature of our universe, and you all understand. And so there are no technologies, cybersecurity, or policies that will prevent people from taking multiple snacks. Okay, so you all understand now. First, before we start off, David Reed, whom you all know, critical faculty member in ITP, etc., he's going to tell you something about technology ventures.
Yeah. So there's a new class, and it's being started up, and I've been asked to do a little bit of evangelism for it. I have a few of the first-year students here. Most of you I don't recognize, but as you know, when I start, I like to say, good evening. And you're supposed to say good evening back. Okay. So, yeah. So the Technology Ventures class, it's really a class that would give you an opportunity to do some research with law students who are working on, as part of Silicon Flatirons, on specific topics. And so this is an interesting and I think a very valuable opportunity for you to do that interaction if you're interested in being, it's not necessarily that you are being expected to have legal understanding, but you're providing technical resources on a set of projects that Silicon Flatirons is interested in. I'll go through the 3 projects very quickly here. They're mainly in the wireless and the cybersecurity, but there is some networking in them. One is the future of 5G, and as it becomes a standardized interface, they call it monoculturization. I think we call that technical standards, but I'm not sure. I'm learning about these projects yet. What are the cybersecurity threats as you have just a common standard that could lead to some issues, and that needs to be communicated to the policy community, both the benefits and the concerns associated with those standards for 5G. So you get to understand 5G. Another one is associated with, it's called signaling and positive train control. So there's concerns about cybersecurity issues associated with controlling trains, choo-choo trains. And understanding and being able to describe to the policy community the difference between signaling and bearer channels or data channels, and how those have different levels of protection associated with them. And then there's spoofing and jamming. There's a lot of spoofing going on with LTE and things called stingrays that get set up. It's kind of a concern. You see a story about once a quarter now about how in Washington, D.C., right next to the White House, there's a lot of different cell sites that people can't recognize or know who's running them. All right, and so you can spoof LTE. This project would allow you to spoof, to show how easy or hard it is to spoof LTE, but then also describe the differences between that and jamming and the policy issues that come out of that. And there also might be one other problem associated with number portability. There's some concerns that are arising with number portability from a networking perspective on if, and there's could be some interest in developing kind of a clean slate approach for numbers portability. So if you have any questions on this, please stop by my office or send me an email. Be happy to talk to you more about these issues. It would really, for those of you in this class, be a nice tune-up for, say, a capstone type of a project, getting that little bit of research under your belt. It's a 3-credit class. Where it falls under in terms of the requirements, I'm going to leave up to Jim and Dan and those to figure it out. It will be worked out and it will work, but I don't know the exact details of where it comes from. Okay? So thanks for your attention, and I'll turn it over.
Tell us what your office number is, please.
347. I'm up in
347
yeah.
up in the engineering tower.
Or just sending, yeah.
From the ITP office.
Just send me an email, and I'd be happy to chat with you. Okay? Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, technology, cybersecurity, and policy. And what you've heard are some really interesting, forward-looking issues around technology, cybersecurity, and policy. There are projects, funded projects, capstone courses. All of those things are in play. Our speaker today is going to give you a broader sense of what may be happening. It's leading in cyberspace and what that means. Many of the issues about technology, cybersecurity, and policy take place in, say the word, say this word. Okay, look, this is the last lecture before the break. I know you're all tired, but please say cyberspace. Okay, good. So technology, cybersecurity, and today, Bryan Sparling is going to tell us about leadership in cyberspace. Please welcome our speaker, and thank you for attending.
Thanks, Jim. Well, a pleasure to be here. So I'm a product of the United States Army. The Uniformed Armed Services in the United States are widely appreciated to be the very best leadership development organizations in the world, according to public polling data. And I want to share some things with you today about what I learned in 27 years in the armed forces. It seems like it was yesterday, but it was just 3 years ago, that was me. And those two on the right are sitting right there. Wave, everybody. Yeah. So Brianna's a senior here, and now my son Holton is here as well. And I'm really glad you guys could be here today to talk about leadership. Now, I thought I'd see a ton of people with their phones up. I don't see any phones here today, and that's exciting. So I was going to encourage you to deny the myth of multitasking and be fully present here today, because you're going to want to hear this, because I'm going to tell you the meaning of life. And I say that with tongue-in-cheek, but I also say it with a great deal of seriousness. So let's unpack that a minute. Why are you at CU? Somebody tell me why you're here. Don't be shy. Why are you here? To get a degree. Why do you want a degree? Get a job, increase your income potential. The returns to education are well documented and well known. There are no better returns anyplace else. But I want to suggest to you that there's a higher reason that you're here today, and that is you are here to become technology or cyberspace leaders. Who here thinks of themselves as a leader? 1, 2 guys. The guy who had the courage to speak, who's not even a TCP student, but he's here from the Fightin' Sigma Nu. And an alum in the back. By the way, I'm an alum of this program. The last time I spoke in this room, I was the TA for the network management class with Ken Klingenstein, and Brianna was 3 months old and still in diapers. So that's how I know it was 22 years ago, because she just turned 22 and she was born here. So you're here to become leaders. So I'm going to talk to you today about cyberspace. What is cyberspace? And suggest try to put that in a larger context for you. And I want to talk about leadership, and I want to talk about each of your personal responsibilities in leadership. Jim said my job is to help you appreciate something of the gravity and the importance of why you're here. And I want to suggest to you it's incredibly important why you're here, and unpack that a little bit. Now, what is cyberspace? Lots and lots of definitions out there about cyberspace. Almost all of them involve some smattering of these things: computers that are connected, computers that facilitate communication either with one another or with human beings, and some type of collaboration at a richer level. For sure, cyberspace has been that thing that has enabled humans to learn from their ancestors and stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before them. That used to take a long time in the form of writing, and now it takes less and less time as the speed of cyberspace allows information and knowledge to move more quickly around the world. What about humans? Are humans a part of cyberspace? See a couple of heads nod. I agree. And I think any definitions are important because they help focus your thinking about something, and then they help drive action when people have a unified understanding of what something is. And any definition that does not include human beings of cyberspace, I would argue, is not a very useful definition. And we'll unpack that a little bit, and I'll get to what I mean. Now, I really like this guy. Kevin Kelly was a founding editor of Wired magazine, kind of the Yoda of Silicon Valley, does a TED Talk every few years when he emerges with the next great a series of ideas. And Kevin talks about the technium, this superorganism of all technology that human beings not only participate in and help create, but are themselves being changed by that. And I think the technium is perhaps a better word for the description of cyberspace. Biologists talk about 6 kingdoms of life. You see those 6 kingdoms here, and Kevin Kelly talks about the technium as being, and technology in general, as being the 7th kingdom of life. That we are, in fact, creating an entirely new biology, and that human beings are evolving as part of that. By the way, part of my intent of my talk is to give you some good content. If you don't know Kevin Kelly, check him out. He's got the shortest and coolest URL on the entire internet, kk.org. Just try to get one of those. That'll tell you what an internet insider he was. He was there at the very, very beginning of The Well. Any of you know what The Well is? It was an online bulletin board. Anybody know what a bulletin board was? You used to dial up your computer with a modem. Anybody know what a modem is? All right, now we're getting close. And online bulletin board. The Well was one of the very first out in the Bay Area, and Kevin Kelly was one of the very first. Now, as this technium has built upon itself, there's been enormous changes to mankind. What is this? Does anybody know? Hint, look in the upper right-hand corner. World population growth over the last 2,000 years. Notice anything interesting? It's an exponential curve, right? And all the growth has come in the last 200 years, right here. For the entire existence of humanity, millions and millions of years, depending on how far you want to, Homo sapiens, Homo erectus before that, human population on the planet was below 500 million. Around 1700, it began to rise. And in 1800, for the first time, we hit 1 billion. But oops, didn't stop there. 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion. Today, 7.7 billion, and it's on its way up. The experts at the UN think it's going to level off somewhere north of 10 billion, but we shall see. Now, how did this happen? I would argue that it happened through the evolution of the technium and the evolution of what we could call cyberspace. Humans were largely an oral tradition. For a long time, writing developed. After writing developed, agriculture was developed. We stopped and formed in cities. Universities came along. One generation learns from another, and you learn. And once you learn quickly, this creates an exponential effect that then explodes. Somewhere around 1970, the last century, joining this information technology wave that goes all the way back to the beginning, came the microprocessor and transistors. And many of you know what's this curve called? Moore's Law. What's important about this curve, it doesn't look like a curve, does it? It looks like a straight line. No, that's because this is an exponential scale. And if you plot that on a linear scale, you get a very severe rise. Now, there's been a lot talked about the expiration of Moore's Law and the inability for it to continue in the way it has, but I think you need to take a larger look at that. One guy and stand back and look at the larger picture of technology and as it's developed. The revolutions that we've gone through in the development of technology, frequently called the Industrial Revolution. You'll notice here this time frame, 18th century, coincides with the knee of that curve when things begin to go north. The first Industrial Revolution was powered by steam power, largely. the paramount technology of the day, Watt's steam engine. Anybody know when the patent for Watt's steam engine was issued? 1776. What else happened that year? Okay, white people. What happened in 1776? The Declaration of Independence. The rise of modern industrial society has been exactly coincident with the rise of the United States of America. This revolution lasted some period of time. The next revolution came along, Henry Ford, mass production and the harnessing of electricity, which was discovered in 1750, but took another 100 years to harness and actually put in place. Next round, electronics and IT. 1941, the first processor. 1970, they begin to get serious and be put into use. This is all about IT and automation. And today, we're somewhere in this fourth realm that most folks are calling cyber-physical realm, characterized by automation, autonomy, 3D or adaptive printing, and of course, artificial intelligence. Anything interesting about this chart? All about power and energy use, absolutely. The industrial age has certainly been all about harnessing energy, and that's one of the chief challenges that we face. But this is a little more than 100 years, a little less than 100 years, about 50 years. So the pace of change continues to accelerate, just like that curve that went up, just like Moore's law that accelerates and goes up. Ray Kurzweil, who here knows about Ray Kurzweil? Knows that name? Not a single person. Okay, 2 people know about Ray Kurzweil. Go look at raykurzweilai.net or singularity.com or a bunch of other places. Ray Kurzweil is another Silicon Valley Yoda type guy. Ray, one of the pioneers in artificial intelligence. He's one of the folks that will say that Moore's law is not just about Moore's law, it's about an accelerating capability of computational power that extends way back before the microprocessor and will extend far into the future. Interesting question to ask yourself is what happens as this line goes vertical and approaches what he calls the singularity. You can already today, he predicted 30 years or 20 years ago that by 2030 you would be able to buy for $1,000 enough computing power to equate the ability of one human brain. We don't know if we're on track yet because exponential curves are hard to plot. Moore's law is kind of plateauing out. But we're entering a whole new era of computing, aren't we, with cloud computing and networking. It's less and less about the individual processor and more about the combinations of processors. We're moving away from a single processor or multiple processors on a single motherboard to Mother Earth motherboard. The cover story of Wired magazine in November of 1996, the month Brianna was born. How cool is that? She keeps getting it. She's tired of it. But this curve, we have every reason to believe this curve is going to continue to go up. And the pace of acceleration and change is going to continue. So you put these things together and put it on an even broader scale, not just hundreds of years, less than 100 tens of years. If you look at the long history of mankind, Homo erectus coming into Homo sapiens, millions of years. Agricultural age, first rise of agricultural society in Mesopotamia up until the industrial age, thousands of years. The industrial revolutions, hundreds of years. Now the computer age, tens of years. Now it gets really weird, right? And you guys are the leaders that are going to lead us through the development and the use of technology in the coming weirdness. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Good. I'm going to give you some things to help you think about that a little bit. Kevin tells us we can invent stuff faster than we can civilize it. What does it mean to civilize things? I would say a good broad definition is that we figure out norms and standards for how to morally use technology. There's a difference between the development of technology and the way technologies actually get used, both at a societal level and an individual level. And you need to be cognizant of both of those things. Now, Who thinks the world is getting better and who thinks the world is getting worse?
Better.
Better? Who else?
Worse.
Worse? I got to vote for better or vote for worse. Anybody else? Suppose it depends on what data set you look at and what your metrics are, doesn't it? But there's some pretty smart guys out here. Everybody know who Steve Pinker is? He's an author, Harvard professor, kind of extreme humanist, brand new book on the New York Times bestseller list. If you don't want to read the book, watch his TED Talk. He'll walk through all the same data. By pretty much any measure that matters, the world's getting better. Here's another guy. Anybody heard of Yuval Harari? This is a fascinating book. His first book was called Sapiens. His second book is called Homo Deus. He talks here about how we are evolving as a species from Homo sapiens into Homo Deus. And he opens the book by talking about the three great challenges for mankind from the beginning of time have been famine, plague, and war. And humanity has essentially figured out how to solve those problems. Famine used to be an environmental consideration. Today, the only famines in the world are political. Plague. The Black Plague famously wiped out a third of Europe. There have been worse plagues in mankind. The diseases that European settlers brought to Central America in the Aztec and Mayan cultures wiped out more like 95% of those cultures. A few years ago, when Ebola broke out in Africa, the predictions were that there would be millions of casualties from Ebola, and it would quickly spread across the West African continent. How many casualties were there? Anybody know? Ballpark? Million? Less than a million? Nobody knows. Didn't make it on Twitter. 30,000. And even that was seen as a failure of government policy. So the bar of how we expect that humanity is able to deal with these things is significantly high. As a soldier, I can tell you that casualties from war have not only declined before the time I put on a uniform, they have continued to decline. When I arrived in Iraq in 2003, at the very beginning of the Second Gulf War, and the months following that, people in the United States were appalled at the fact that we had a couple thousand casualties. Significant to be sure, and every life is important. But there were 5,000 people killed in the first minute of the Battle of the Somme in World War I. The bar for nation states to justify the use of lethal force has continued to go down and down and down, and increase the importance of special operations and precision munitions. When I was in Afghanistan, the director of programs there from all information programs from 2010 to 2011, I spent a good 75% of my time dealing with the media and justifying civilian casualties on the battlefield. How much sense does that make? When the U.S. Army trains a soldier for three decades, sends him to war, and he spends 3/4 of his time justifying the use of lethal force. Such is warfare in the information age. So if things are so great, why are more people killing themselves than ever? These are teen suicides, to be specific, 10 to 19-year-olds, latest report from the Centers of Disease Control. What happened right here? 2007. The iPhone. Smartphones. The iPhone.
LTE.
You know, I don't know. Suffice to say, there's a disconnect between metrics and the data and what the data would tell us, and the data, wait for dramatic effect with my prop, the data that is true and that is out there, and the perception of the data we get from doing this. I walked in the parking lot from here and I looked for a student that was not doing this. It took all the way from the parking garage to the light and across the street until I found one. They were all doing this. These insidious devices, not insidious because of the technology they have in them, but because of the technologies that have been built in them in the form of highly addictive applications, okay, are causing huge challenges for what it means to be a human being and your perceptions of the world. So you get to choose how you use these devices. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. If you want to know how the world really is, this is an excellent book. Hans Grosling, for years, a doctor from Sweden, made it his life's work to build a fact-based view. He published this book. Actually, it came out right after he died, unfortunately. But this is a great treatment of why it is that we don't see the world the way that it really is. I've just finished reading it, and I highly commend it to your view. Some of his tools that he developed are ones like these. This is his Gapminder project. You can get online. You can change your X and Y axis. This one's got life expectancy on the left and income on the right. These are the last 200 years from 1800, the knee of the curve that we're talking about. These colored bubbles on here correspond to the different continents that we're on. The yellow here, as you can see, highest life expectancy, most wealthy. There's, anybody know what that country is right there? Close, good get. That is the Netherlands in 1800s, the Dutch East Indies Company, right? Anybody know what that green bubble is right there? North America, that's the United States. Already pretty wealthy and healthy. Pretty fascinating to see what happens over 200 years. The size of the bubbles on here corresponds to the population. The big one here is China. The one here that grows quickly is India. Watch as we approach World War I, you get to see the effect of wars. World War II. And here comes the United States. You'll notice countries get healthier before they get wealthier. Because if you're puking all the time or dying at age 6 or less, you're not much help to the economy, right? Okay, I commend to your attention gapminder.org and Hans Rosling and his great new book and all the wonderful work that he's doing. Has a wonderful suite of tools in there to help you build mental models to actually see the world as it actually is, and not as your emotion will tell you it thinks it is. So these are some of the reasons that wonderful people like Sherry Turkle, Alone Together, Life in the Modern Technological Family. Everyone together in the same room, physically separate in a different space. Human beings were made to interact with one another. These are some of the problems that you can have when technology gets away from us and we don't develop policies and ways to civilize them and integrate them into our families in time. So what I want to suggest to you today and begin to bring this home to you guys is that there's a big difference between the creation of technology and the use of technology. Technology in and of itself, coming out of the lab and then turning from science into engineering and into actual products, I would argue is amoral. It is without morality in and of itself. It's when you move from existence of technology and actually put the technology out there for people to use that morality enters. And now is when you begin to get into the realm of policy. And I'm a huge fan of what Dan's done with this program, or is doing with this program, and changing it from just an interdisciplinary telecom program and making it an interdisciplinary telecom, cybersecurity, and policy program, because it's all about policy and the ways you use it. So here's some examples. Let's take the internet, and then we'll take uses of the internet. And this is a spectrum, if you will, from good to poor, or not so good. The internet can be used for a lot of things. It can certainly be used for knowledge learning, wealth creation. It is being used for all those things around the world today. It's also been used for some horrible, despicable things. And there are a number of things that are somewhere in the middle. It's a good thing that the Silicon Valley guys hire social scientists to figure out what colors and blinky things on your phone get you more addicted to your apps. Or is that a bad thing? Well, you need to decide. Leaders at all levels of organizations need to make those decisions. And those decisions are not huge black and white decisions that get made between all good, obvious, and all bad. Typically, the decisions you're faced with on a daily basis are between shades of that spectrum, between good and slightly better, or between not so great and slightly worse. And the posture that you're in along the way, I'll talk more about this in a minute, you get created as a person through that process of decisions that you make at every step of the way. Let's look at another technology, far more controversial, nuclear fission. Good thing or a bad thing? Reality. It's physics, right? It's physics. You can make bombs out of it. You can make energy out of it. Hardly would think these are a good thing. But I would say there's even another step after technologies are created, and that is your policy for how you're going to use them. Bombs can be used for terror and to manipulate and coerce societies. They can also be used for deterrence. Mutually assured destruction has been the policy and the deterrence for the United States and others around the globe that have kept nuclear weapons in the ground for the last 70 years and ushered in the longest period of peace in modern history. This is a choice. Incidentally, we, the nations of the world, have chosen not to treat cyber weapons with the same transparency that we chose nuclear weapons. And maybe someday I'll come back and talk to you about that being one of the principal policy challenges around the world today with regards to cyber warfare. Energy. You can create energy out of nuclear fission, right? But if you don't deal with the waste and the residuals of that in a responsible way, you get environmental catastrophe. All of those are products of policy. You move from science to engineering to policy. As you guys move from the classroom out into the world, you're going to come in. You probably, a lot of you have how many of you have hard science backgrounds in your undergraduate degree? Quite a few, more than most of the room. Science. And then you're getting out of here, you're probably going to be more dealing with a higher level of stuff of engineering. Elon will tell you this is where the money's at. It ain't the science, it's about the engineering. This is the really hard part. But someday, you either get to stay here forever, or you get to let those guys go off and deal with the really hard things, which is the policy work. How are we going to use this thing? And this doesn't just deal with government policy, this deals with corporate policy and decision making inside an organization. And this is where you get to morality. And when you get to that point in your careers, who you are and the litany of decisions you've been making for the last 20 years all set the stage for the realm of choices that you are capable of making at that point. Someone dangles $1 in front of you to build an app that gets teenage kids addicted. You need to be able to decide whether or not you're going to say no to the corporation and take a more courageous track, or whether you're going to say, oh yeah, let's go get us some of that because I want to make $1. Hard choices that you're preparing for now to make 20 years from now. Now, how do you do that? And as I said earlier, where those choices go depends on leadership at every echelon of the organization. So hopefully by now, I hope you got a little bit of a sense of the importance of cyberspace. Cyberspace, I view as one step, maybe one era of the long evolution of humanity's creation and employment of technology. It's the era that we live in now, and it's the one that will quickly be leaving as we evolve onto being Homo Deus, if Harari is right. So let's talk about leadership for a minute, what leadership is, why it matters, who leaders are, and how you lead. So who's got a word? Somebody give me not this word, because I already put it up here, but somebody give me some words for leadership. What is leadership?
Inspiration.
Inspiration. Well done. Anybody else?
Responsibility.
Responsibility. Absolutely. Anybody else? How about control?
Power.
Power. Anything else? How about management? The U.S. Army, when I was 19 years old, maybe it was 20, I was in college. You enter your first military science courses, and the first one was called Leadership and Management. And I thought, isn't that redundant? Leadership and management. U.S. Army's only been around for 200 years. Haven't they figured out by now that leadership and management are not the same thing, or are the same thing? It took me a few more years to figure out they knew exactly what they were talking about, and leadership and management are not the same thing. Matter of fact, the military talks about command and control. And command is about inspiration. It is about attractiveness. It is about leading. I'm going this way. If you're going this way and you look back and there's nobody back there, you're not leading. You're going for a walk. And if you've got an organization and you're trying to keep all the hens in the box and make sure that no one goes outside the lines and remains compliant, you are managing. Managers don't change the world. Leaders change the world. And they change the world through inspiration and leadership. Leadership at its heart is a truth of what it means to be alive, what it means to be a human. Think about, right now, somebody who has inspired you in your life. Okay? That person demonstrated a depth of character, of honesty, of creativity, of a bunch of other characteristics that you could go on that you found attractive. And once that happens, what happens? You then orient yourself. You go to be, you want to be where that person is. You want to read what that person wrote. You want to watch the TED Talk that that person talked, right? That's the dynamic of leadership. Human beings orient themselves to other human beings that they find inspirational. Okay? So how are you leading today? Because here's the deal. You don't get a pass. You don't get to not lead. You don't get to say, I'm not director of Umpty Frat or whatever title is on the front door and say, I'm not leading. I'm a manager, or that's not my job in this company. The only guy in this company is a leader is the CEO or the chief operating officer or whatever. No, you're all leaders. You're all leaders. And you may be leading some people negatively with your poor decisions. Okay? That's the guy walking this way and you look back and there's nobody back there. But you are leading. You are leading all the time. The number one person you're leading is you. You are leading yourself in the development of who you are, but you are also having an influence and an inspiration on everyone that is around you in your personal sphere of influence. So know it, own it, wear it, okay? Because you don't get a day off. You don't get a pass. That's point number one that you got to know today. Who are leaders? You are leaders. Leaders influence. People follow leaders. Why does it matter? A lot of reasons it matters, but that one's pretty good. Dr. John Maxwell, I don't know if there's anyone in the world who's a more widely known leadership expert, written 30-some books on leadership. He is on retainer with multiple heads of state as personal leadership coach and consultant. He knows a thing or two about leadership. In Maxwell's words, everything rises and falls on leadership. Why is that? Because everything is about human unity of action and cooperation and collaboration. And the way you get those things is through leadership. So become a student of leadership. Put that in your kit bag and make that part of what you're doing during your time in the beautiful environment of the University of Colorado at Boulder. And by this time, you should know who's a leader. Who's a leader in this room? Well, come on. I've been talking for a half an hour. Okay, we're going to try that one more time, and I'm going to set the example. Ready? Who in this room is a leader?
Everyone.
You're not owning it, brother. You're just like holding the pen up, trying to hold. How is as important as what? Who's a leader?
We.
I am. So I am. Okay, you're all obviously all shy, and you're not quite sure. He's saying I'm a leader, but I don't know if I really buy it. Buy it, people. Buy it. You're not here to learn about hypertext transfer protocol? Listen to me. When I was standing here, that was a new thing. When I was standing here, we had to put an S on it. Secure socket layer was a brand new thing. HTTPS. You'd put it on there. I asked one of my students, I actually am teaching a class here right now on cyberspace implications. And I asked one of the guys the other day if they still learned about POTS here. And I don't mean marijuana, I mean POTS with an S. Does anyone in here know what POTS is? Not you.
Plain old telephone system.
Plain old telephone system. You got that 2-wire copper telephone system, 56K, Shannon's capacity theorem. Do you guys still learn that stuff? No, you don't. Okay. We actually went to NOAA and saw a Cray supercomputer, now blown out of the water by one of the smallest level iterations of what you can buy on Amazon Web Service in 15 seconds for $150. And we went to the telephone switching center. If you go to the south side of town, just as you're leaving Boulder, heading south on Highway 93 to Golden, on the left-hand side, there's a nondescript red brick building. We went there. Do you know what's in that building? You know something about POTS. Do you have any idea what's in there? Switches, yes. You know what else is in there? You probably know. Liquid lead acid batteries. This big around. Why? Because when the power goes out, your phone still works. Why does it work? Because it's got a 28 volt or 12 volt circuit on it. Where does that voltage come from? The lead acid batteries sitting down there on South Boulder Road. Okay, I brought all this up to say that the stuff that I learned 20 years ago doesn't matter anymore. So what are you guys learning about? Border Gateway Protocol? What's the hot new thing? 5G. Is LTE really 5G? I don't know. You're learning about the latest, greatest in technologies. And that's going to give you a basis for how to learn about technology. And that's what you're learning here. You're learning how to learn, and you're learning how to be leaders in the coming age, because the knowledge is perishable. Right? My exponential curves should have told you that. You're not here to learn information that you get to barf back at your boss in 6 months to a year from now. You're here to learn how to learn. You're here to learn how to lead other people, and you're here to learn about yourself. So develop habits that are going to let you do that. You matter. Now, this is the crux of it all. Leadership is about character. It's not about how you behave. It's about who you are in your core cores. Think about people who turn you off, who you don't want to be around. Of the many ways they might act, I would argue one of the core ways is hypocrisy. They say one thing and act another way. Well, guess what? The way they actually act is a function of their character. Your character is who you actually are. It's who you are when no one's looking. It is who you are when you are presented with a certain set of circumstances in the future. Your character now is how you will behave when you are presented with that ethical challenge in the future. And the character that you have in the future is a function of the decisions that you make along the way. This is where we get to the meaning of life. You each get to choose the person you are becoming. You are not a passive recipient of the world and the inputs that are around you. The world that we live in today will tell you that you are nothing but a collection of matter and energy, a meaningless wad of dust standing on the side of a big rock hurling around in outer space through a vast empty void of space. You mean nothing. That, my friends, is one of the worst lies that humanity has ever come up with. And I'm going to prove it to you, okay? It's not that you don't matter. You do matter. And the reason you matter is because you get a choice. You get to choose whether you're going to be faithful, whether you are going to be just, whether you are going to stand on and promulgate truth in this world. You get to choose that. You get to choose the kind of person you're going to become throughout the series of choices that you make in your life. And that, my friends, is what makes life what it is. Your choices determine you. You are here today, and out here is future you. You and future you. Now, future you, there's a best future you, and there's a worst future you. Okay? This is life abundant. You are living the dream. What is your dream? Huh? Become a leader. Gold star. If I had one, I'd give you one. Become a leader. You're going to become a leader. You already are a leader. Whether you become the best leader that you can possibly be, completely fulfill your potential in life, depends upon the you that you become sitting back here. Now, I am a ridiculously overly school-trained strategist and planner. And I will tell you strategies, synchronization of ends, ways, and means. Ends being the goals that you identify out here. Means, the resources that you have. You really only have one. What's the one resource you have in this world? Time. And the means are the ways that you choose to employ them in here. The second-by-second solution that you go on in life. And like I said, the choices that you get presented with in life do not necessarily say, well, today, should I go out and create cold fusion and solve our global warming and energy problems? Or should I go be an axe murderer and kill a couple people? Those aren't the choices that you get presented with. You get presented with, should I stare at my phone and look at meaningless tweets for the next few minutes and see what somebody else wants me to think about? And probably spend a half hour when I only meant to spend 30 seconds? Or should I go read a book? They're small decisions. But when you make a small decision here, and you wind up here, you're a different person than you were here. And those small decisions at each level build upon one another in an exponential fashion, just like the growth curve that I showed you earlier. So by the time you're out here, you're not even in a place where you contemplate going out and being an axe murderer or some other terrible thing. You're in a place where you're presented with a whole different set of much better possibilities and choices that you get to make. It all starts back here. Don't look at Instagram. That was a joke. Okay? The point is you get to choose. You get to choose who you are. Now, I said it ends, ways, and means. Determining your ends is most important. How much time have you spent in the last week thinking about who you plan to be 20 years from right now? Who has thought about that in the last week? My kids have thought about it. Right on. Go Sparlings. Anybody? Okay, let me ask you another one. Who has written goals? You've written goals. Excellent. The science is well documented. People that attain the most in the world have goals. They have them written down. They review them consistently, and they tell them to other people to keep them accountable. Okay? So step one, sports fans, is have goals. Think about, spend time thinking about, dreaming about who you want to be. And I would encourage you to write it down. Have a creative writing process. Sit down and write about your life in 10 years. Talk about everything. Are you married or not? Kids or not? Where do you live? What's your job? What's your income level? What are your sheets like? What kind of house do you live in? What is a yard? Do you have pets? Think about it. Dream it up. The more detail and richness that you can put into that, it will write it into your brain, and it will affect your momentary decisions when you're here about what you choose to do with your time. Mind control, 1984, George Orwell. The worst possible thing we could think of is that someone else would brainwash you. If you are standing around all day doing this, and you're not reading a book, and you're looking at Twitter, okay, you are letting someone else, you are giving up your God-given ability to choose what is important. You are divulging to your feed whatever somebody else thinks is important or funny for you to occupy your time and your brain with. You are more than anything else a mind. And your most amazing, incredible characteristic that you have in you is the fact that you get to choose the type of mind that you are going to create. You literally get to choose who you're going to become. So choose well and create habits that make you the kind of person that you want to be. I already talked about character. Now there are two practices I want to give you. This is the takeaway. I told you I was going to tell you the meaning of life. I already told you. All right? It's that you get to choose. It's that what sits inside of you is the very best thing about this universe. You. And the fact that you get to choose whether we live in a good universe or whether we live in an evil universe. Right? That's the trade-off in every Hollywood movie. I've never seen any Bollywood movies. I don't know anything other than this movie. But, so I don't know what they're about. But I know they're about dancing. Right? I thought that would play with you guys. It did. So I'm going to give you 2 practices. And write this down. I'm going to give you 2 things to build into your life, okay? Here they are. Be still. I mean physically still, but I more than that mean mentally still. In our hyperactive kinetic age that we live in today, your biggest challenge is that you have more inputs vying for your attention than you can possibly process. At the societal level, we got more change than we can process, as Kevin Kelly said. Change faster than we can civilize it. At the personal level, you've got more inputs than you can bring in and you can digest and you can make part of your vision for your life. One way that you can process these things is by having a routine pattern, a time of day, every day, a habit of having no inputs. No inputs. Okay? So physically still, sit, kneel, lay down on your face, stare at the ceiling, do whatever. No inputs. Be alone with you. You are precious, you are important, you are of infinite value. So how much time are you spending thinking about you? Now, I want to tell you, there's a best time of day to do this. It is awesome. Every 24 hours, our planet spins around. And for part of that time, its back is to the sun. And you know what happens when the back is to the sun? Things go to sleep. Birds, animals, creatures, everyone except people that work at 7-Eleven, they all go to sleep. And the world gets super still. And even the people that stay up really, really, really late, even they go to bed right as the sun is coming up. So if you get up in the morning before the nonsense of the day comes around, okay, that is an awesome opportunity to be still and be quiet because the world hasn't gone crazy yet. And your iPhone won't bug you until 7 a.m. I know, because I put it on there. It will stay quiet, and it will leave you alone. Moreover, that's your time of peak energy. You are at your best self after you have slept all night long. Moved your short-term memory into a little step closer to your long-term memory. Get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, a chai, whatever you like, sparkling water, and be alone with yourself. Make it a discipline to do not turn this thing on until you have spent time with yourself, thinking about your best future, what your goals are, and who you want to be. Does that sound like a good deal? 24 hours in a day, you think you guys can do it? Can you give yourself tomorrow morning 5 minutes? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Be still, alone with yourself, and think. Now, read. Reading's another one. Read something specific. Read books. I've told you about a number of books here today. Why books? Anybody want to guess? As opposed to magazine articles, Twitter feeds, web pages. You can read books at the same time as being still. Now, I want to be clear. These are 2 different activities. Being still, you're not reading books. Being still, the only person in this conversation is you, all alone with yourself, thinking about what you think is the most important, what is the most true. What is the thing, here's a thought, what can you count on in this world to be true all the time, anywhere?
Yourself.
Yourself. I let myself down fairly frequently. So think about that tomorrow morning for 5 minutes. Okay, so think about truth, think about beauty, think about these things. Think. That's the point of this time. This is about input from other people. Books, A couple reasons why books. First off, books take time to write. So many authors, between the time when they start a book and they finish a book, change the book. They learn something in the process of writing a book. Something else, books take generally more than one person to write. The myth of the single author is just that, a myth. Books take an army of editors, publishers, and other helpers to get books to where they want to be. So they are already a collaborative process. Books take a longer time to read than a tweet. Therefore, it is a larger commitment. So you need to choose wisely. If you choose to read the next tweet, that's not much of a choice because it only takes a second. But if you never stop and think about what you're choosing to read, like a book makes you pause for, that's going to take me a month. That's a bigger commitment. You're more serious about it. But if you don't do this, you may wind up reading nothing for the next month other than tweets, right? So that's not good. So read books because there's a higher level of investment in writing them, and there's a higher level of benefit that comes out of reading them that you get out of the other end. And do it every day. What I'm talking about here is creating habits in your life that will feed back to you, returns to you. We started today talking about the returns to education, and that's what I want you to do. If you need some good books to read, look up this one. I used to work for Admiral Stavridis, fabulous leader. This book is awesome because it is he interviewed hundreds of four-star level commanders in the military, and some other folks rated all their books. He asked, what are your top 3 books? He ranked them, and I put them in this book with a synopsis about every one of them. And here's a free tip. If you go on Amazon and download the free sample for your Kindle, you get the entire list of books for free, as well as the first chapter. And the first chapter is all about how do senior leaders, busy people, create time to read. He gives you an entire chapter on creating time to read. If you don't think you have time to read, know that many very successful people like Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg and Elon and lots of other of these folks read upwards of 50 and 60 books a year. Right? That's a book a week. These are busy people. But they know that they're too busy not to read, not to feed that brain, because that's what keeps the creativity and the vision coming of the goals and the objectives they're trying to get. So there's a good book. Start every day well. I already talked about that, why morning is a special time. So use it, and use it, grab it, and use it to your best and fullest potential. Truth, I already told you about thinking about truth. It's a great first thing to talk about. I said 5 minutes tomorrow, but I think 30 minutes for a life goal is a much more useful chunk of time, and it's probably a reasonable amount of time as you move back into your professional lives. Develop a habit of spending 30 minutes alone and quiet with nobody's thoughts but your own, and thinking about what's important for your life, what your goals are, who do you want to be, and am I achieving those things? It's hard, and the first time you do it, your mind will wander. So bring a piece of paper, and when you're thinking and trying to think about X, and you're thinking about that last video you watched last night before you went to bed, write down the thought that's distracting you. And when you write it on that piece of paper, your brain will let it go. And over time, you'll create the ability and the habit of mind and body to be able to be still with just your own thoughts and to focus. The ability to focus is largely being lost in our society today as we flit from one thing to another. Quickly. The only way we're going to navigate and vision your very best self, I thought about, think about these sorts of things. There's a lot of ugliness in our world, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot of beauty and truth in our world as well. And if you're getting all your news feeds and your input from sources that are teaching you that the world's ugly and depressing and down, is the way I feel when I watch the evening news, so I stopped watching the evening news. Go find some facts and some data from Hans Rosling and Harari and Mr. Pinker and some of these other folks that'll show you that the world's actually a worthwhile place. Read books, be still, and do it every day until it's a habit. Habits are those things that are ingrained in your character that you do without thinking about it. Get yourself to a place where when the alarm goes off, you get up and you go be still. before you do anything else, before you let anybody else. And if you do these things, I'm very confident you will find yourself becoming the person you want to be, and you will find yourself walking along one day, and you'll look over your shoulder, and there's going to be a number of people following you. And they're going to be the kind of people that you want to be following you, that you're proud to have following you. Sound good? Go Telecom. Go Bucks. Do you have any questions or time for a question? Or maybe you don't do questions here. I don't know.
If there are any questions, first of all, thank you very much for a fantastic, inspirational presentation about cyberspace and fundamental habits of the human being.
There you go.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, issues, etc.? Just one. All we need is just one. And then you can go to winter break.
Wow, really?
No, you guys, no, you get away from there. Stop that. Yes, you.
So what are the goals you have written and what's the result?
What are the course?
Goals. Written goals.
What are my goals?
Yes. And what's the result?
And what has been the return?
So what are the goals
Yeah.
you have written
Yes.
in your life and what is the result?
Ah.
So goals and results for you.
Funny you should bring that up. My written goals over the years have all had to do with my military career. I wanted to make the rank of colonel. I did. Have to do with my marriage. I've been married for, we are in our 30th year, 30 years next May. That's right. So those goals have to do with my unity with my wife. And my other goals have to do with those two and their younger brother. And I have some other goals that have to do with my spiritual life and my relationship with God. Yeah. I could give you specific metrics if you're interested in it. But those are the goals that I've had most importantly. And my lesser goals about, what books I want to read, how I want to spend my time, and things like that all stem from those. Those are the top level. You get to writing goals, it turns out there's kind of a cascading hierarchy of these things, and it's more important to get the ones at the top really right, and then the other ones flow down from that. Yes, sir.
Time for one more.
I'll just...
Top 3 favorite books and why?
My top 3 favorite books? Wow. Okay, so my absolute favorite book is the Bible, okay? I'm a Christian, and I find more truth in that book than continues to blow my mind on an absolute daily basis. So that's absolutely number one. I'm trying to choose right now. For this group, I would say Catch-22. If you've ever read Catch-22, it's a portrait of a bomber's life in World War II in the Mediterranean. No book that I've ever read has captured the irony and the ridiculousness and the terror of war like that book. Within one flip of a page, I would find myself literally laughing out loud. Few books have ever made me laugh out loud, and jaw-dropping, breathless horror on the next page. That is a work of art. And then one other book I would recommend for this crowd might find interesting is Neil Stephenson's book, Cryptonomicon. Historical-based fiction, came out in the early 90s during the dot-com boom. When I came to school here, the dot-com bubble was just about to burst. It's a fictional tale about cryptography, about a guy in World War II, works on the Ultra and Magic program, and then his grandson is starting a modern-day dot-com data haven using modern cryptography. We were having big debates in those days about 128-bit encryption. And and that book's a great gateway into Stevenson's other bodies. Neal Stephenson is the sort of godfather of cyberpunk literature. William Gibson is most credited for coining the phrase cyberspace in his book Neuromancer. Neuromancer is mostly pulp crap, but Neal Stephenson's book Snow Crash has, in his description of the metasphere, written in 1994, ladies and gentlemen, how many of you were alive, is the most prescient description, vivid description of cyberspace as we have it today. So Neal Stephenson is an author worth investing your time in. We had another question. We out of time? I know we're a little over, but.
I think I am obliged to give the last question to.
Oh, yes, sir. Okay, last one, we promise.
Nowadays we have this version of books when you take like electronic version and physical books.
Yeah.
Is there advantage of reading one book?
Yeah. Yeah, so Kevin Kelly is a lot wealthier than I am. He buys books in both digital and written form. If I had enough money, I would do that too. But I've found myself these days, I get a lot of books in audio format, like say from the library, and then I also, like Hans Rosling's book I have right now, both in audio and in printed format. But books that I'm going to keep to reference, I tend to buy because I like to write in them and I like to take notes. And the process of writing in a book, I find, helps me retain the information, and I tab them up. Plus, you can hold it, you can feel it, you can smell it. I mean, there's something awesome about the physical book. It's one of the most fantastic creations of mankind. One of the biggest challenges with the cyber age that we live in is just the ephemeral nature of information now. I've got photographs that I took earlier in my life. I still have shoe boxes full of film photography. You guys remember that? Maybe not. But then I have all this digital photography. I got like years of digital photographs that I don't know where they are. They're lost, right? Because the daggum photo stream updates on my laptop, or maybe it doesn't. I got to pay Apple $15 for the cloud. My kids, it's all too hard. Where did they go? I don't know. My wife says, "Where's that one picture? I can't find it." So there's something nice about a physical book. Plus, you can give them to your kids and your grandkids. How am I going to give them my iTunes account with my iBooks in it? I don't know. It's a business model that somebody should very seriously figure out. I think there are already some people working on it. Digital rights transmission. That's an interdisciplinary problem. It's a legal problem, it's a technical problem, and it's a very real generational problem. How are you going to collect up all the bits? How do you get some bits that your friend wants to give you? If you got a book or a CD, your friend can give it to you when they're done with it. Not so with digital rights. How can we solve that problem? Somebody could solve that problem. You can make a lot of bang with the right timing to market. All right, you said that was it. Thank you for coming. Really fun talking to you guys.
Thank you all for coming. Obviously, there is no lecture next week because it's winter break. Please have a safe winter break, and we have one more presentation. No.